Hello everybody, Gisele Grenier here. In this video lesson, it's a skill building lesson on color mixing, pulling from a question that somebody asked. And can you help me mix portrait colors? Well, that's a wide range for portrait colors. And the person asked to be anonymous, so I don't even have their name. So thank you for the question. So what I thought I would do is I'm going to be doing 4 separate videos, and I'm going to be covering off warm skin tones, cool skin tones, reddish and greenish skin tones, and then dark skin tones. Yeah, so that's a really vague question, so I don't know what colors that you have, or if you're basically just starting from scratch. So I'm going to approach this as a beginner wanting to paint portraits. And to start off the bat, painting a portrait, diving into painting a portrait is a setup for failure. You need to learn to mix the colors first before you go into painting portraits. The best way to start if you're going to be painting portraits is you start them in black and white. So just pure black paint, white paint, gray tones in between, and then you paint it in a monochrome. Okay, that's the way to start, and because that way you'll master the values, and the values are critical, especially when painting portraits. So stepping outside of that, we'll work on creating some mixes from warm skin tones. I've got a variety of colors here, and so I'm using the Decor Traditions, Opaque Titanium White, Naphtha Red Light, Yellow Oxide, Raw Sienna, and Burnt Sienna. That's all you need. So depending on the brand that you're using, you could use cadmium red light. Okay, now in acrylics, cadmium red light is highly toxic, especially if you sand it and you inhale the particles. So, keep in mind if you're working with oils, it's a little safer because you can't, you're not going to inhale the particles themselves, but due diligence, look at the warning labels. You're responsible for doing all that, and contact the manufacturer if you're not sure. That's why I use these ones here. The other one too, if you have yellow ochre, that's a common question that I get. Is yellow ochre the same as yellow oxide? Yellow oxide is synthetic, yellow ochre is organic. So they both basically do the same. Yellow oxide is a little bit stronger than raw sienna and burnt sienna. All right, so I've got my mixtures up here so I didn't lose my place. I'm just going to get a round brush, and I've got the colors here. So there's my yellow oxide, raw sienna, and burnt sienna. Now, if I by chance, by accident, say yellow ochre, that's only because I've done so many years and studies under master artists with oils, and it's always yellow oxide and cadmium red light. The cadmium I'm not going to worry about because I rarely use that, but I may call this yellow ochre by mistake. So when starting to paint warm skin tones, you have to look at where placement is on the color wheel, and I've got videos to cover that. I'm not even going to go there. So let's just make 5 basic colors. So I'm going to start with yellow oxide, and then what I want to do is, remember it's a warm skin tone, I'm going to pull in just a touch of naphtha red light. It's going to warm it up just a little bit. Okay, so we have that. Now what you could do with this, that would be your base mix. Okay, when painting this, when actually creating paint, when I was doing the commissions and formal fine art, I would always start with white and then go from there. So we're just going to pull that on the side. I'm going to go right on the side, and I create it on the side because that way it gives me a wider range of values. So right from here, I've got a 1 value. And then I take whatever's left of my dirty brush, add more white, and go off onto the side. And now remember, you're learning. This is an investment in your learning, so don't look at it as wasting paint. Okay, I'm just going to wipe the excess off the brush, pick up more white, go on the side. And when painting portraits, I have a massive palette. When I was painting portrait, I don't do them anymore. Massive palette, and I would have, and it's just color strips going all the way down. And then basically you would create this strip like this until you got to the lightest light. But you see what happens, you know, you've got, these colors go so far. And then from here, the way that I was teaching, I'm talking past tense because I retired, is that you make up you pre-make your portrait colors. And acrylics is a bit harder because they dry so fast, so you may want to add some extender to make it last longer. But you create your mixtures, then you look at what the reference that you're painting, whether it's a live model or your photograph, then you take the main color, you go to your palette, find the closest color, and then adjust from there. You make your mark on your canvas, analyze. Look at the photo, look at the live subject, go back to here, analyze. Is it warmer? Is it cooler? Does it lean this way or this way on the color wheel? Is it lighter? Is it darker? Is it more intense or is it duller? So there's a set of questions that I would ask, and I covered that off in a color mixing course that is available on the YouTube channel and in the Facebook group. And it's free of charge. So there you go. So just with this range of colors here, you can, you know, you've got your darks, and this could even be even darker, and you can darken that even more by adding, you know, whether it's adding a little bit of raw sienna, you can darken it. Just because I have the 5 mixtures here doesn't mean you can't darken this a bit more. Adding yellow oxide to this will just make it more yellow. But by adding raw sienna, because it's so close on the color wheel, it will make it darker. Okay, so we've got that range there from darks, mediums, and it goes up to the lights. Rinse the brush. And you can tell that this is, you know, you do end up using a lot of palette paper. So if you have a glass palette, that's the best thing that you can use. So there's the colors. I wonder if I can put, I've got a darn glare. There's nothing I can do about the glare because that's the studio lights, but how's that? I just don't want the paint to run down. All right, we're going to start off now with raw sienna, naphtha red light, and titanium white. So the exact same mixture here, but we're going to be using raw sienna instead of yellow oxide. Why? Well, why don't we see what happens? So what I'm going to do this time, I'm going to flip it in reverse. So in this one here, I actually made the dark mixture. Now let's start with white. Okay, and then we're going to add raw sienna, just to show you the differences in mixing. And then add a little bit of naphtha red light. Oh my goodness, look how pink that is. No, 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 no. So when you're adding the white, it's hard to judge that base color, especially when you're working, like I'm working on a gray palette and you've got the color mixture here. So it comes with experience. Like I did this on purpose, but it comes with experience when you're creating your mix and then you need to add the white to lighten. When you're going the opposite way, you're starting from the light value and going up, you really need to understand your colors and how strong they are and how much you need to use. So I would start off with maybe just this much, then go with the raw sienna, and then go with just a speck of, a bit more than that, a little bit of naphtha red light. And even then, it's still quite dark. All right, so now we can add a little bit more white. So this mixture here now is a little bit red, a little bit more on the red side. But I'll show you something. Let me just create my color string here. Okay. Now this one here doesn't go, this one here I actually added too much white on this. It should be more like dark, medium, light, and then these two are naturally fit in. So when I've got this mix here, so I could turn around and say naphtha red light, oh sorry, I'm not, raw sienna, a little bit of naphtha red light. Come into here first. Now add a little bit of white. So it's less red. So this is where you have to start adjusting. So you take the photograph that you're working from or the live model, and you're going to be adjusting. You make that mark on your canvas. You go, okay, is this mix here lighter or darker than the area that I'm painting? Like I'm just going to say the photograph. Is it lighter or darker? Is it duller or is it brighter? Is it too red on the color wheel or is it too yellow? Okay, so you have to ask yourself all these questions to understand how to then come to the mixture, make an adjustment, make another mark, and ask yourself those questions again. Depending on how far you want to go with the realism of your portrait, you're going to be asking yourself those questions all the time. Master artists also do it. They never, ever create a mix and get it right on the first shot. People are unique. People all have different skin tones, and depending on the light, depending on what's surrounding them, the light reflects off their skin. It's all different. Even the artists that already have their paints already pre-mixed in tubes, you still have to mix them with something else to really balance everything out. Okay, so don't get frustrated if you're creating your mixes and they look nothing like what they're supposed to. They won't. You need to make those assumptions. You have to say, okay, well, this is the closest color to what I'm painting. You make your mark, or whether you put it on scrap paper and put it up to the model or next to the photograph, and you ask yourself those questions, and then you make an adjustment and you repeat that scenario over and over and over again. Okay, so now between these two, if I wanted to make that a little bit darker, I could take this mixture here. I don't know if I have enough paint there. There we go. So I took that and added a little bit of this mixture to make it dark. And the only difference, really, you don't even need to make this. I just took this, add a little bit of raw sienna to make it darker. Okay, and then from there, if you wanted to, you would just add white. And I think that paint is dried out. And you just make your color string that way. Okay, you see where I'm going here? All right, so that's this one, that's this one, and that's these two. Okay. So another basic mixture is just yellow oxide and white and raw sienna and white. Now, if you've done my color mixing courses before, you know that that's a basis of when we get started in color mixing anything, is you take white, add the color to see the true underlying color. So if we just take white with yellow oxide, and we get that started there. And then you just add white. I'm just going to wipe the excess off the brush, pick up more white, wipe the excess off the brush, pick up more white. And I'm wiping the excess off the brush, that way the steps are much stronger because I don't have a lot of paper. Although this looks white, it's just off tinted. Off tinted? That even makes sense. Off tinted. All right, then we do the same thing then with raw sienna. The raw sienna doesn't seem to go as far. But look at that beautiful dull color. So you can see, depending on the skin tone, depending on, you know, if it's, personally myself, I like the skin tones with the raw sienna a little bit better. It's more of a golden skin tone. So this is really, really pretty here. But it all depends on what you're looking for. Then I'm going to show you, oops, wrong mixture. Then I'm going to show you about painting a pink, a very pink skin tone. Now I'm going to be covering off a bunch of skin tones. There's no specific order that I'm working with. Just basically, I've got notes on the side when I teach. I've got my charts here of all these things that I've made up. So it's just these skin tones are the first ones that came, you know, on the chart. I'm not going to forget to do dark skin tones or reddish or greenish skin tones, so don't worry. There we go. Look at that. So that's a really nice skin tone right there. And then from here, if you wanted to go even further, then you can take yellow oxide with raw sienna and mix those two together to get your strip all the way down. So that's something else that you can do. So we just take yellow oxide, and I would say an equal amount of raw sienna. And then from there, I mean, you can then add more raw sienna to do another strip, and then add more yellow oxide to do one version, then raw sienna to do another version, and it can go on and on and on. It just depends on how far you want to take it. And I've run out of paint. Run out of room. But this is why when saying, you know, you want to learn how to create skin tones, that is such an open-ended question because there's so many. There is no one solution, one mixture. There's just different mixtures, and then from there you have to adjust them. You have to. Like if you want to paint abstracts and that's fine. That's a completely different thing. But if you're looking at doing realistic portraits, you know, or with accurate colors, then yeah, you have to know color mixing. Okay, because then you ask the questions, you know, about it being warmer or cooler, lighter, darker, brighter, duller, you know, what side of the color wheel it leans on. You know, if you look at this, you go, okay, well, you put this down, this is a little bit too yellow. I need it to be a little bit more golden. Then you know raw sienna is the mix to do that. Okay. All right, so let me entertain you. Let me figure out how the heck I'm going to do this. Shoot. Where am I now? Yellow. Okay, so I'm going to go here and keep that right there. All right, so with the questions here now, when you go in here and say, let's say you have somebody that's very, very fair. And let's say I put this color down, or one of these colors, and say they're very, very fair, but their skin is very pinkish. You go, okay, what do I do? Well, then you look, okay, well, what's the color on the color wheel? Well, naphtha, in a normal palette, I have naphtha red light. I also have alizarin crimson on there as well. Well, alizarin crimson's too blue. So for a very fair skin that's very pinky, alizarin crimson might be good. But if the skin tone is very fair, very pinky, but more on the orange side, naphtha red light is going to be what you want. So again, it depends. So with alizarin crimson, that's more on the cool side of the color wheel because alizarin crimson leans more towards blue. But naphtha red light leans more towards the orange side of the color wheel. So it depends on what you're painting. So, oops, I need more white. There. So let's start off with yellow oxide, and we're going to make this a little bit more pink. And then you can come in, and where am I going to put this? Sugar, so yellow oxide plus naphtha red light and titanium white. This is not typically how I teach color theory, color mixing for portraits. All right, so it's not quite this and it's not quite this. It's a bit more, it's this with a bit more red in it. And then now we're going to basically add I'm gonna look here. So I'm looking here. I'm going, okay, is this red enough? No, it needs to be a bit more red. Okay, so that's fine. A bit more red. Then I would make my mark. I look at my photograph. Questions. Lighter, darker, brighter, duller, cooler, warmer, and which side of the color wheel? Well, the side of the color wheel is right because it's, I want a fair skin that's pinky, that leans towards orange. I don't want it to be blue, so that's right. And the brightness, yeah, that's actually not too bad. That's pretty good. And then you would ask yourself, okay, lighter or darker? That's way too dark. And that's where then you would turn around and then you would use a lot more white. So dirty brush with white. Okay, that's actually not bad. Then with acrylics, you have to let it dry because they dry darker. Then you could try to say, okay, well, let's pretend that's dry. Is it pinky enough? Maybe just a little bit more red, just a speck. Just a speck on the dirty brush. There we go. So you see what I mean? It all depends on where it leans on the color wheel and how you're going to mix that up. It would look completely different if it was a alizarin crimson that you were using, and we're going to do that in another video. All right? So now the next mixture we have to do is going to be yellow oxide with burnt sienna and titanium white. All right, so now let's work with the burnt sienna. So this is even going to make it even darker. So let's go, and then you can also do raw sienna, burnt sienna, and titanium white. So I mean, you can alternate between the two. Do you need something that's a little bit more yellow or something that's a little bit more golden? And how much burnt sienna will depend on what you're working with. So, do you want something like that? Do you want something like that? It all depends. Do you want something like that? It all depends. Then from there, we just use white. So I'm not going to go as far down because I won't have enough white. Actually, I'll do it for this one. Mia's at my door. She wants to come in. She got caught in my headphones and they fell on top of her. The cable was hanging down and she's terrified of coming in here. She's terrified of coming in here. Wonder if I can get. See the differences? And if you're interested in painting portraits, you can't just watch the video. You actually have to take the paints that you have and do the exercise because it all depends. I'm doing this based on the lighting that I'm in, the situation I'm in. This is not the ideal area right for where I am if I wanted to paint a portrait. But just to give you an idea, this is how I'm doing it. Oh, not enough white. And then you have to take this and then apply it to your own situation wherever you are, at home or in a studio or whatever. So with the yellow oxide version, it's much brighter. It's a lot stronger. So then with this I say, okay, well, with all these, how different they are, if I want to make this a little bit darker, I can turn around. I can say, okay, well, let me take a little bit of burnt sienna right in there. And then I'll get this. See, just a speck gives you that. Just a speck. Well, let's make it just a speck darker. Just a little bit, not much. I'm thinking, oh, but you know what? I think it's becoming a little bit too yellow. Then this is where the actual formal color theory, color mixing goes, then you could add a little bit of blue to counteract it. Or a little bit of green. So it depends on what you want to use. If you want that to make it a bit pinker, then you can come in and just a speck. Just to make it a little bit more pink. Let's say you really want to put a highlight in. You take white. Oh, even that's still too dark. Again, you would be comparing everything. White on the dirty brush, you're just tinting it. There we go. You can say, oh, well, I need to put, maybe you got a sunburn or whatever. Well, sunburn, you probably would use more of a the alizarin instead of the naphtha red light, because with the alizarin crimson, it's a bit more on the blue side. See the difference? Then you could add even more. Oh, let me just get a bit more white there. A bit pink here. So you don't need a lot of colors to create all these different mixes. You just have to know how they work together. So with this golden color, if you're painting somebody who's dark skinned, and let's say their skin is really, really golden, then you can take the burnt sienna, you can add the naphtha red light to it. Okay. And then, of course, the white. I'm going to get rid of a lot of the paint that's on there. And this would be for either highlights or, you know, let's say it's too pink. You can then take it down with a little bit of yellow oxide. See how that neutralizes it? But if it's too yellow, then you can go with raw sienna. It all depends on what you're painting. Darken it up by adding more paint, less white. Lighten it up by adding more white. When you're adding more white, you're actually just changing the value. By adding another paint color, you're changing the hue, you're changing the color. White doesn't change the color, white just changes the value. White or black changes the value. Using another paint color, that changes the color. Hopefully that makes sense. But so, I mean, you can see how I could do this for hours. I absolutely love mixing colors. I could do this for hours. But in the sake, because still have to do the cool skin tones, and I have to do, let's see, the reddish and greenish, and then the dark skin tones. And even with that, we covered off a little bit of the darker skin tones here. With that, we're going to be using a little more like the raw umbers, which is more neutral, and mix that in with raw sienna, mix that in with burnt sienna, because it's more of a neutral color. So, but you can see like a wide variety here of, you know, what you can use. And then I can even take my own skin tone and I can, you know, kind of go here and compare. Use your hand, compare, say, okay, is my skin tone darker or lighter? Duller or brighter? Does it lean more towards red or does it lean more towards blue? Lighter, darker, you know, all those questions. And I'm looking here and my skin tone is pink, more pink than that. Well, I look here, okay, well, I can go here. And I squint my eyes so I don't see the details, I see just color. When I squint my eyes, value-wise, I think it's closest to that for value, but this is still too orange. So I would have to do a mix between these two. So this is how you can judge that. Oh, right here. This is actually pretty close right here. This is actually not too bad right in there. But use your own skin tone to judge it. Then use your arm. And then put your paint chart up to your face, not on your face, but next to your face, and compare. Let me just show you another photograph. So this is when Wolf was a baby. I could use this to match his color. Okay, if I want to, like, look at Ava, her skin is really, I probably should have asked permission to show this, but they don't look like this anymore. But her skin is very, very pink, and I'm looking at the photograph here of Wolf when he was a baby, and in the photograph, it looks green. There's a bit of a green tint. Using photos for painting portraits is not ideal, but sometimes it's all you have. Live subject is always, always better. All right, so hopefully this gives you a jump off point to practice some warm skin tones. Again, the question that I was asked was very vague, so I am going to cover off the other skin tones as well in separate videos. And then from there, you know, you can pick what you're looking for and just go with that. But this is a basic, this is a Cliff Notes version of painting color mixing skin tones, because it goes further than just mixing the colors. It's understanding the colors on the color wheel. It's understanding values. It's understanding color temperature. It's understanding the intensity, the saturation, all that stuff. Okay, so if you're really interested in mastering the color mixing for portraits, because portraits is about color, then about proportions and shapes and all that stuff, there's a playlist in the YouTube channel, and in the Facebook group there's a free color mixing course and challenge in there. You're more than welcome to try either one of those out to give you a starting point. And hopefully these videos here too will get you going. And if you have anything specific that you're looking for, please, if you're possible, let me know what type of skin tone. Even better if you have a photograph that, you know, just fire me off the link where I can see the photograph. You know, and, you know, what colors you do have in your base palette, just so I can try to replicate, you know, what you have to what, you know, what I have, try to replicate it and try to give you some more accurate advice instead of being so vague. Alrighty, you guys, I'm going to leave you with that. And until I see you in the next video where we're going to cover off cool skin tones, stay inspired.